Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Ewok Village live chat. Today I have Nick from Podcast of the Whills. I'm super thankful that you joined me today. I know this weekend is hard to find time, and everybody has a lot of family stuff, so I really do appreciate you giving some time.
Absolutely. I'm glad to hang out. I'm glad to be here and got my coffee and just excited to have a good conversation.
Nice. So if you wanted to start out, and we've already got some people in the chat. We got Zalu Toy Hunter, Razef, how's it going? Kat, how's it going? Chris, good morning. I love Chris. Chris is an awesome guy. I don't know if you saw the video. He's the person who sent me the autographed Star Wars prints.
Oh wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, he's
super jealous of those.
Yeah, Lando Calrissian, Chewbacca, David Prowse, Vader.
God, that's so awesome.
Yeah,
well, and another one that you have that I've seen you talk about before is your Kenny Baker R2-D2.
Yeah, it's hanging up over there.
Yeah, that's amazing. R2's one of my two favorite Star Wars characters of all time, so anything R2 holds a special place for me.
Absolutely. Hey, Salacious, how's it going? Crazy 8, what's up? Hey, Mark, good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon for you. So if you wanted to introduce yourself a little bit and talk about what you've done with the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like Brandon said, I'm Nick, and I host a show called Podcast of the Whills. Podcast of the Whills, we actually started that in 2018. So it's been, almost going on 4 years now. Me and my buddy Steve, we started a traditional audio podcast. And the kind of original concept of the show was Steve is a preacher. I worked in youth ministry in churches for a bunch of years ago. And we're huge Star Wars nerds. We're people of faith. And so we said at a Christmas party, hanging out, having the chance just to do what we love to do, which is when we see each other talk about Star Wars. The tagline for the show is the show that treats Star Wars like a sacred text. And essentially the way the show started out was it's like we're doing a Bible study, but instead of using the Bible, we're using Star Wars. And so what we did is we took New Hope and we broke it down into categories. And so like the first episode was, partnership. And then we watched the first few minutes up through R2 and C-3PO landing on Tatooine. And we looked at it from the eyes of, what is a partnership? What is, the pros, cons, and use Star Wars as the background context. So that's where it started out. We broke New Hope down into, I think it was 6 or 8 episodes. And it took us a long time to get through those because in between that, we also did all the traditional podcast things like trailer breakdowns. And I've said this many times, but we did a 2-hour episode on a 1-40-second trailer because we picked it all apart and speculated on it. So we eventually finished that New Hope run of that original series of the show in between. And as we were working our way through that, we got to do some other fun stuff. We had Alex Segura on, who's the author of Poe Dameron Freefall.
Yep.
Had a chance to talk to him right around the time the book was coming out, which was a lot of fun. And then Mandalorian was gifted to us. And so then it became every Friday we did Mandalorian recap shows, usually around lunchtime after the show dropped. And that was a lot of fun. We tried to keep that, we came up with 5 questions that were, favorite part, least favorite part, pivotal plot point, favorite Easter egg, and what do you want to see or know more about? So that was a great way. As I joked, it was 8 weeks of guaranteed content because there was going to be a new show every week. And then as the second season of Mandalorian started to wind down, I got a little bit nervous and I thought, well, I want to keep the momentum going. We had gotten good at being consistent and putting stuff out. And I kind of thought, well, what's the next step? What do we want to do with the show? And about the same time we were coming up on that, Steve, my co-host, was kind of in one of those unfortunate grown-up moments that happen to all of us where he's in a PhD program. He has a full-time job. He has a young child and another on the way. Just life was piling up. And he said, I just don't think I have time to do this right now, but I don't want you to wait on me. Keep going if you want to. So I took that as the opportunity to, I see Andy down there making his comments. Maybe if you play your cards right, just maybe. But I took that as the opportunity to pivot to a weekly Sunday night live stream. And so this week, I think this will be the 12th week. So I've been doing it for about 3 months now, episode 12. Every Sunday night, I have a guest on, and I've started doing this thing, and I've not done it a couple of weeks, but I've done it for a while. If anybody has seen the videos on Instagram of Stanley Tucci making cocktails in his really perfectly appointed kitchen wherever he lives, I decided I was going to be the Stanley Tucci of Star Wars podcasts. And so most Sunday nights on the show, I will make a cocktail, name it after my guest as a way to just kind of kick the show off, get started, just being silly, having fun. And then what we've done also, or what we do on the show, is we do a top 7 list. I started out with 7 just kind of arbitrarily, and I've ended up sticking with it for no real reason other than it is top 7. And so, we've had some really fun folks on. Last week, I had Charles Boyd, who works for BioWare, and he is the senior creative director for Star Wars: The Old Republic video game, which I've never played, but is a huge online deal. And so we did his top 7 Star Wars video games for that list. We've done a bunch. We've had the ladies from Force Toast on, and they talked about their top 7 Obi-Wan Kenobi moments because they're big Obi-Wan gals. I had Yoshi Vu, who's the digital effects artist, and we talked about his favorite visual effects shots. So it's just fun, and like anything else, it's a chance to talk about Star Wars. It's a chance to talk about something I love. My wife said early on when Steve and I started doing this podcast, and it was very sporadic at the beginning, finding a chance to coordinate and try to act like we were really professional, like hiding in our closets to get the sound just right and all this kind of stuff. And she was like, who do you think's going to listen to this? Which is a fair question, no doubt. And I said, honestly, I don't care. And I still feel this way. I do want people to tune in because I love the community that, has been built around this. But if nobody listened or nobody watched, I'd still want to do it because I still get to have these conversations. And that's what's fun. And especially over the course of the last year, and we've all said this a million times, as we've been quarantined, as we've been, kind of trying to be isolated from the world while we get through this difficult thing, to have this connection, to be able to plug into the internet and sit in the corner of my garage and get to talk to you. Hey, thanks for that sub. I really appreciate that. To be able to sit and do this is what, I've got a family, I've got 4 daughters, I've got a wonderful wife. Like there's a lot going on, but this isn't, they don't really understand my obsession with Star Wars. It's not their thing. They appreciate that I love it. And that's kind of where the line is. And so to have this community, to have the chance to sit down on a Sunday night and pour myself a drink and talk to somebody fun about Star Wars, especially when I'm lucky enough to get, somebody who worked on Star Wars, like Yoshi, who worked on Rise of Skywalker, to get Charles, who's worked on the Star Wars Old Republic game. If I can plug tomorrow night, we've got a guy named Brandon Bernard. He may know him online as the Brandalorian. Brandon is the senior creative director at Topps for the Star Wars Card Trader app. So if any of y'all use the Card Trader app on your phone, he's going to come on and we're going to talk about his top 7 Star Wars characters. And so again, for me to get to talk to somebody like that, whose job is Star Wars, is just icing on the cake. So I do want an audience, but if I didn't have one, I'd still do it because I love to talk about Star Wars.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've loved the different topics that you covered. And I really liked the episode, the family moments in Star Wars. That was really cool. That was awesome.
Yeah. David Drennan from His Father and Son was on. And he was, I think, the second one we did. And in fact, he gives me a hard time because I hadn't started doing the drink thing yet. So he wants to come back because he wants a drink named after him too. But yes, that was a great episode. And it really spoke to me as a parent as well, to have, that kind of connecting point, because I do see that in Star Wars. And, I go back to, I've got twins. I've told this story before, but hopefully some of your folks haven't heard it. I've got twins that'll be 13 next month. Like I said, I have all daughters, and my oldest daughter, Harper, loves Star Wars. And that's, she's kind of dad's girl and has come along with me in Star Wars and all that. Her sister, Lily, I think a little bit to a degree of like, well, I'm not going to like the thing that she likes because I need to have my own identity. She grabbed onto Indiana Jones when she was younger. And so my twins, their two favorite characters were Han Solo and Indiana Jones. And so I had that moment. I was like, y'all realize that's the same guy, right? It's just, whatever. So for years we joked that one day for one of their birthday parties, we were going to have a Harrison Ford birthday party and tell everybody to come dressed up as their favorite Harrison Ford. Get a Deckard in there, get it. In fact, let me use this as the opportunity to show what we were talking about.
Absolutely.
I mentioned earlier, Yoshi Vu was on my show. Shout out to Yoshi. Yoshi's a senior generalist. He does visual effects, and his thing is like hard surfaces. So like if you watch Rise of Skywalker, the scene when Ben is on the ruins of the Death Star talking to the ghost of Han Solo, Yoshi did all that background stuff in those scenes, the hard surfaces, all of that. When he was on the show not too long ago, and he sent me a piece of art that he created, and it is Indiana Jones, Deckard, and Han Solo having a conversation about the Millennium Falcon. And it's just one of those moments where I'm like, it's so great. All those worlds just smashing together. Really cool. It reminds me of a tattoo that I saw one time that I might have to get one day, where it's Indy in a crypt somewhere with a torch, and what he has discovered was Han frozen in carbonite.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
So it's pretty good stuff.
Sean was saying he's played the card trader for 2 years, and
outstanding.
Mark said he had it for 6 years and just got back on it.
I've never, and that's another.
Yeah,
it's fun, and it's it's free. You can pay for it if you want to. It's kind of got that freemium thing to it. I don't spend real money on it, just because I have to, again, kids to feed. But it's a fun thing, and it's also another one of those little connecting points where we have friends that we've made through this podcasting community. Frank and Amy, Framey, a lot of times in the live chat. I met them through the podcasting stuff. Well, they're also card trader folks, and they actually do like real card collecting and all of that. And they also live in Alabama, where I live. So it's all these funny little small worlds of, again, connecting up through a community like a podcast. Talking about the podcast and, why do you do it and silly stuff like that. My parents have started watching my podcast. And so on every Sunday afternoon, my dad will call, and my dad introduced me to Star Wars, but he'll call, "Are you doing your show tonight?" Is it, because I taught him how to put YouTube on their TV, and they can just sit on their couch, and it's like I have a TV show, which is really funny.
Yeah. And to mention that, Framey, they're awesome people. And, we got to know each other through the Beyond the Blast Doors network. And it was probably around this time last year that I started watching the different shows. And for a while I didn't comment or anything like that, but then I started, feeling comfortable with the group. We're both Patreon supporters of the network. I want to say
except for Andy. I don't support Andy's part of it. I support everybody else, but
not Andy. No, but that Beyond the Blast Doors and the Resistance broadcast really got me back into Star Wars, and really appreciating podcasting, because I didn't really listen to any podcasts before. I didn't try to look for them or anything like that. And I mean, the community of friends that we've made now, and then, seeing how the Beyond the Blast Doors network, I'm gonna, Andy, here,
nice.
There's for you.
There's his plug. Yep. I've got my exclusive Holochronicles koozie. Apparently there's only 2 of those in existence, so I feel honored to have that. Well, and talking about the community again, and like you said, and Beyond the Blast Doors. In fact, I see Michael, he chimed in. He got plugged into that too. Something that I've really enjoyed and that has been fun has been these Friday night Force Connect shows that they do.
Absolutely.
Which is, in sports radio parlance, it's a call-in show. You get to call in, have a hot take, get out, whatever. But again, over the course of this last quarantine, Force Connect has kind of been the bar on Friday nights that I haven't gotten to go to have a beer and talk with my friends.
Yep.
And it became a virtual pub that we could come in and talk about Star Wars and, just be silly and watch, Jackson put funny movies up on the screen and videos. I got cricked last night for the first time. And
I saw that. That was pretty good.
If you don't know what that means, General Maydeen and his fabulous beard and hair, if you're lucky enough, you get that plastered on your face, you've officially been cricked.
Hey, Ish, how's it going? Hey, Robert, Pops. Hey, Pops. Yeah, and getting to know everybody from that community has been awesome, because then from them, other people, it's going into different, pretty much everybody in this is from this chat. There's a link back to Beyond the Blast Doors for me.
That's right.
And
they're all such good folks. And I bet you've experienced this too, but Pete and Andy and Jerry and Scotty, I've gotten to know those guys, but I've texted Pete with questions about, doing my show and, getting feedback. And he's always so kind to offer, well, this is what I try to do, or just because I want, I joke all the time, I'm not trying to copy what he does, but when you see something that works and is good, you go, I want to be like that. Not because I'm trying to steal your deal, but when it works, you go, ooh, that's the model to follow. And it really is about, the positivity and the chance to, again, just connect. Michael, playing video games, when Squadrons have come out, I've played 1 or 2 times with y'all in Squadrons, and I'm terrible, but it's fun to hang out and let y'all laugh every time I, pilot error myself into the side of a ship.
Absolutely.
So it's about community, and that's really, I think, the key point we're getting to, and, having these opportunities to connect with each other, whether it's on a Saturday morning, a Sunday night, a Friday. There's a lot of value in it, and it's fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Josh, how's it going? So now that we've had a chance to, talk a little bit, I wanted to ask you where your Star Wars story really started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned a minute ago that, I was really introduced to Star Wars by my dad. He was always a sci-fi guy. He was a little more Star Trek than Star Wars, which is perfectly fine. I grew up watching Star Trek, all the movies. I have an appreciation for Star Trek. I just always gravitated more to Star Wars. Yeah. Actually, and this is, I guess, a sketchy take, but I didn't have any real problems with the newer Star Trek movies, the reboots they did with, Chris Pine and all those guys. I thought they were pretty fun. But Star Wars, I joke all the time, it's been around my literal entire life. And that's, of course, that way for a lot of people. I was born in November of 1978. So New Hope had come out just the year before. And there's never not been a time when I haven't had Star Wars. I was a little young to see Empire in the theaters, but by the time Return of the Jedi came out, I saw that in the back of my parents' station wagon at a drive-in movie theater in Central Illinois where I lived. And so I remember that. And I had, some figures. I didn't have as much of the toys as a kid. I had a lot of He-Man. I had the Ghostbusters toys. But I had some of the toys, and I just grew up, whether it was playing with the toys or even more specifically, just playing Star Wars, imagining running around outside, having a fake blaster, taking the old silver handled flashlights like our grandparents had, like these things, the old school, and going outside. And when you shined it up in the air, all the dust particles in the air and that light beam, it looked like a lightsaber. And so in my kid mind, it was, hey, lightsaber time. So it fed my imagination. It was something that I just, like everybody, I instantly gravitated towards the story and the hero's journey part of it. Even though at that point I didn't know what the hero's journey was, I just knew, holy crap, this is amazing. And so grew up with it. And then, like everybody, as I entered those dark times, the long stretch of period before the prequels, read lots of the EU. I don't know at what point I actually discovered the EU and all the old EU books, but I did, and just consumed tons of those. And I still say my favorites are the Heir to the Empire trilogy, that original First Thrawn trilogy. It's a little hokey, it's a little weird, but that's what Star Wars is. It's a little hokey, it's a little weird. And so for me, that was the sequel trilogy for a long, long time. And then when we found out we were getting the prequels, I was in college when Phantom Menace came out, and saw those, and I was disappointed. I don't think we were at a point then where we had this built-in rage factory where if it's not exactly what we want, that we lose our mind about it. It was just like, that's not what I hoped for. But I didn't leave like my life had been ruined. I just went, So I spent a long time just kind of being ambivalent about the prequels. And then as the sequels came out, kind of got excited again. Force Awakens for me did what it did for a lot of people. It kind of rigged, holy crap, this feels like what I didn't get with the prequels that I thought I deserved or wanted at that point. And as I continued to get older, as I continued to see Star Wars for what it really is, which is fun, entertainment, I really do appreciate the prequels more. The reformed prequelist is the term we throw around a lot of times. Yep, exactly, right there. But that was me. Like, I just, I love, there are things that I wish were different. Do I wish it was called a holocron and not a wayfinder? Sure, I do. Am I going to go burn something down in my neighborhood because they didn't do that? Not really. But it's entertainment and it's art, and art is subjective, and it's supposed to be, interpreted the way you want to interpret it. But it's also, again, it's fun. It's something that I can share with my kids, even the ones that aren't super into it. My daughters, I talked about them, and one likes Star Wars and one doesn't really care. But when a new movie comes out, it's like, are we going to see it at the theater? Yeah, we are, because that's an experience. And that, it becomes something you get to do together. A little plug, there's a video that Shannon did back last summer that was the moment Star Wars spoke to me as a parent, that she put together, which was really touching. And I got a chance to be a part of that and talk about Star Wars moments with my kids, and a bunch of other folks too. Andy was in it. Yoshi was in it. Quite a few people that we, have mentioned were in that video. And it was funny because my wife gives me a hard time all the time. She's like, I don't understand Star Wars. She's tried to watch them and it just doesn't work for her, which is fine. But we watched that video last summer after it came out. And when it was over with, she looked at me, she goes, I think that's my favorite Star Wars movie. It was the 30-minute video about all these parents talking about the connection with their kids in Star Wars, which I had with my father. And now I'm sharing with my kids. And so it is also very Star Wars in that vein. It's something passed as father and son, or as father and daughter. And so that's really what it comes down to. My Star Wars story is very similar to most people's of my age. But it's just something I've always had. It's something that as I've gotten older, as much as I loved it growing up, I don't know if I thought about it every day the way I do now. I'm consumed with it for different reasons. I have a podcast, and so I'm always thinking about content and how does that relate to this? And every time a news story drops, I'm like, am I going to talk about that, or who's going to talk about it before I do, so I don't have to? It is a thing, but that's a part of having a passion and having something that you really enjoy.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for me, my mom is the one who introduced me to Star Wars. She worked at a movie theater and worked at an arcade, and she really got me into all of those, 80s. Basically everything pop culture comes from her. Nice. Indiana Jones, Alien, Terminator, Predator, all that kind of stuff. And it's been nice moving back home and being able to watch movies with her, because we'll watch it and I'll tell her things about it, and she'll be like, I didn't realize that before. Like, she watched them and enjoyed them, but she didn't get all of the little nuance things. And she, bless her soul, put up with the prequels for me. I melted the tape of Phantom Menace, and I'm nice. that's like one of my Star Wars fan badges, is melting melting that. And we went back and rewatched them, and I explained some of the things, like, this is what's building up to this and this and this. And she was like, I enjoy those a lot more now. Absolutely. After rewatching them. And being born in 95, sorry, I know, I couldn't help it. I always get crap. It's all good. There wasn't a time for me where Star Wars, there were a couple of years between prequels and Force Awakens, but there wasn't a time where Star Wars wasn't huge, because even during that break, you still had the Clone Wars and Rebels, and I'm trying to think if there was a game somewhere in there, but during that span, it didn't seem long. And I got kind of pushed out of Star Wars because I was bullied for liking it, and I didn't enjoy being around it anymore. And
Sure.
I enjoyed the original trilogy and the prequels on my own when I watched it, but I didn't talk with friends. But then when I got to college, I had friends who appreciated the movies, and we went to the Force Awakens together and all that stuff, and it really got me back into it. And then when I started my YouTube channel and listening to podcasts and stuff, I've enjoyed it so much. And
absolutely.
But when it comes to collecting, I love everything that I see behind you there, and the art prints that you've been showing and stuff like that, just amazing. But I wanted to hear a little bit about how you started collecting.
Absolutely. Like I said, I had stuff as a kid. I had toys. I had some Star Wars toys. I think I had an X-Wing. I had the Snowspeeder, handful of figures. Didn't have a lot of the big stuff. Like I said, most of and I don't know if it was because this is how I expressed my interest as a kid or my parents just decided, but like I said, I had a lot more He-Man, Masters of the Universe stuff. I had Castle Grayskull. I had, a bunch of those things, but I always loved Star Wars. I had some of that stuff as a kid. And then when I was in third grade, we moved 3 times that year because my dad's job changed a couple of times, and we ultimately moved from central Illinois to central Alabama, which are 2 very different places. And I think in the process of those moves and, whittling stuff down or whatever, most of those Star Wars toys disappeared. And I don't think it was anything nefarious. I think they either just got lost or pitched because they were probably abused or whatever. And so, life moves on. You just kind of keep going. You grow up, you have other toys, you do other things. And then I had in college, as I was kind of circling back around to some Star Wars and some of that kind of stuff, I had some of the Lego sets. And here's what kills me about the Lego sets when I was in college. If I had them now, they're worth some really good money because they were those early Star Wars Lego sets, the X-Wing, some of that kind of stuff. But, those moved on as I, got out of college and, started to grow up, not because I didn't think grown-ups could have toys. It was just one of those like, what am I going to do with this? And, got rid of it. So in 2017, I went to Celebration in Orlando with my good friend Chad Gibbs. And Chad is an author. He lives in Auburn, about 45 minutes away from me. Okay. And we had gotten to know each other over recent years, just over various other things. And we found out that we both love Star Wars. And so that added to, this growing friendship. And he called me up one day and he said, Celebration is going to be in Orlando, and I think we should go. And I said, you don't have to tell me twice. Like, what do I need to do? Well, by sheer luck of being friends with Chad, I think I said Chad's an author, and he has written a couple of travel books and books related to travel. Well, as a process of that, he did the whole travel hacking thing where you get, the points on, credit cards and, air miles and all this kind of stuff. So he had so many points built up that like literally to go to Celebration, I just had to pay for my ticket. Like his points paid for a rental car, a hotel, like all this stuff. And so it didn't really cost either one of us anything except the ticket to get in. So we went on that Thursday in 2017, the first day. We only went for the day. We road trip to Orlando, 9 hours or whatever it is from here. Spent the night, got up, went that Thursday. It was amazing. It was completely overwhelming in the best possible way, as I've said many times. No idea what to expect. We didn't do panels because we didn't have time. It was really like the show floor, walking around, seeing everything, realizing I didn't bring nearly enough money, all that kind of stuff. And so as we were driving home, we were just talking about, the stuff that we got, the stuff we saw. And I knew that he had a collection. And for the longest time, because we live in the Deep South and college football is a religion here, we're both Auburn fans. We live in the state where you have to pick Alabama or Auburn. And Auburn is not usually perennially as good as Alabama is, but we do okay sometimes. And so Chad was telling me about how his deal was anytime Auburn lost a football game, the way he soothed himself was to go on eBay and buy a figure that he didn't have. So it was kind of like a way to make up for the fact that they had lost the game. And so, I laughed, of course. I thought it was funny. And just as we talked about collecting, I realized that I could get back into collecting some things. It's not that I didn't know eBay existed. Of course I did, but I just had never stopped and spent any time to think about, hey, you could go get some of those things that you missed from being a kid or whatever. So when I got home, shortly after I got home, he sent me, let's see if I can reach it here. Because his favorite Star Wars character is Lando Calrissian, he sent me a completed, get my face out of here. Anyhow, completed vintage Lando. It's got the blaster, got the whole deal. Mm-hmm. And so he bought that on eBay and had it sent to me as a, hey, get your collection started. And so I, of course, jumped into the eBay hole. And the first thing that I got when it came time to restart my collection was my Empire Strikes, or this is actually Jedi, Return of the Jedi blaster, Kenner. And it still works. Makes that terrible noise. It doesn't sound like a blaster. And that was kind of what got me started back into it. And so, of course, it was easy to not easy. I had to be careful not to fall down that rabbit hole and just go spend all the money I had because it was all right there at my fingertips. Absolutely. And so I did get some stuff. I got some figures. I ended up turning around and selling those figures off and starting over for foolish reasons that collectors do those kinds of things. But it was also the chance to decide how I want to collect. And I know the Holo Chronicles guys talk all the time about, what is the focus of your collection or what do you want to collect? Mm-hmm. I would love for my collection to primarily be built around stuff I actually get to find out in the wild instead of just going and buying it on eBay, because there's a thrill of the hunt kind of element that goes into it. Yeah. But it's not always easy because there's not always good stores. Most of our thrift stores around here, or flea market type stores, are more like boutiques where somebody has bought old furniture, painted them up and made them cutesy and artsy and Etsy and Pinterest like, and now they're selling them for a premium, which is great. More power to them. But I grew up like in Central Illinois where my grandparents lived, where they had what they called junk shops, and it was straight up like go in and find people's old toys and old, it was a lot easier to find that stuff for cheap. And so it was that digging and diving. And so over a period of time, I have, had a couple of scores here and there. Mm-hmm. I had somebody on Facebook 2 years ago, maybe. Somebody on Facebook that lived here in Montgomery where I live had posted they were getting rid of a bunch of Star Wars stuff for $50. And I about bought it sight unseen. Just from the pictures that I could see, I was like, oh, there's a couple of things in there. And so I went and got it. And he was like, oh, yeah, this is my stuff. It's been in my parents' attic forever. And I was just like, I'll take it, whatever. Well, I got home and it had a Falcon in it, and it had the Death Star playset, which is, I don't know if you can, it's up there on the shelf. It's kind of precariously balanced because it's still being restored and put back together. Mm-hmm. It had, just a handful of like ships and pieces and some of the Hoth playset stuff. And I just was like, okay. And so then I kind of fell down that rabbit hole of like restoring, some of those toys, and the great, the Palatoy, the guy on Facebook or on YouTube. There's a couple of great videos where they'll show you, how to disassemble and how to get the, run the motors and try and get the motors going again. One of the ones that I'm really proud of is I have the vintage troop transport. And I don't know if you know about the sound thing on the inside of this, but it's a little miniature record player. Yep. Yeah. And when you hit the buttons, and so that one, like I took it apart. I hope the battery's still good. And so you can get all the different sounds. There's a 3PO in here somewhere. Anyhow, so that's another one of, for me, that's another one of the fun things about vintage collecting is like, can you bring it back to life? Mm-hmm. It adds another layer to, having that collection going, not only did I find it, but I was able to kind of bring back to what I remember as a kid, how it worked, how it sounded. And it's just, I'm sorry, I'm texting a child in my house. Okay. And yeah, so it's something fun. That sound, yeah, Andy, you're not wrong. But to get that working was really, something I was excited about. And I have two falcons. My parents, I grew up in Selma, Alabama, and they've moved over to Montgomery close to us. And it was something that they go to an auction once a month. They have some friends that run an auction house over there. And so I've got them kind of trained to call me when there's Star Wars stuff. And my dad called one day and he was like, hey, there's a Millennium Falcon here and they only want $10 for it. And I was like, I don't care what it is, buy it. Even if it's new, just released yesterday. Well, he brought it to me and it's a vintage Falcon and it was $10 and it's in really great shape. And so it's something that I've got the two and I need to kind of go through the parts and see if I can get the motor running. It's a project that I haven't taken the time to, sit aside and do. But it's just, it's fun. And that's the whole thing. Like we said about Star Wars, collecting is fun. Being able to be able to do that, to be able to go find stuff, whether it's on eBay, whether it's trading. Andy has sent me stuff. We've done some trades. Having a toy community, the hashtag toyalty, as we like to say, connecting up. And again, just things from my childhood.
This is from Andy. He had some extras and I bought them for $5 each from him.
That's
I got
awesome.
like 6 figures and I was super excited. Cause I just recently started getting, just the beginning of the year, I talked to, Blue Harvest Vintage Toys, about collecting vintage. And now I've got the first 12 and probably like 8 or 9 more vintage ones. And eventually I would like to get the whole vintage run, but I'm going to be patient with that. But absolutely.
It's an excellent poster. And the Boba Fett's right over here off camera. I've got it up on the wall as well.
Yeah, I need to do some rearranging in my room to get to where I want to put the Boba Fett one. But the frame that I got, because it's a little bit, it's not as common of a size poster here. I had to get a frame, but now I've got to get the drill into the wall and everything. So it is a nice picture. And thanks for stopping by, Red 5. Collect them all. Seen it somewhere before. Nick got all my Star Wars extras and Brandon got my Empire Strikes Back. Awesome.
That's right. That I've got up here on this shelf behind me. I have it's the back that came when they did that anniversary series with the Black Series, the bigger ones, and it was the base with the backs behind it. And talking about collections and, trying to be sporadic or trying to figure out what am I really focused on collection wise. I decided a month or so ago that I want to start, I'm primarily a vintage collector. Most of the stuff that I'm usually after is whether it's toys or even just collectibles in general, vintage posters, any of that kind of stuff, silly things like, I'm sure a lot of y'all have seen, and I love to talk about this just because it's weird. There's a shot that was either a deleted scene or just an outtake from when they made Star Wars, and Luke is in the X-Wing right after they've blown up the Death Star. It's back in the Yavin in the temple, and everybody's celebrating and going crazy. And there's a shot of Carrie Fisher handing a beer to Mark Hamill, like up the ladder on the thing. Well, a lot of other nerds have done, I paused, that video, and I love beer. And so I thought, what kind of beer is that? What is she handing him? And so you go find out it's an End Cooper Double Diamond. It's a British beer company because they were, at Pinewood in the UK filming and doing the movie. And so you can go get these on eBay for like $4 or $5 or $6. And, they've drained the bottom of it. It's not open on the top. And it's like, why do you have a beer can sitting there? And then you get to tell the story about, well, it's this other random, that kind of deal. And so with my vintage collections, coming back to what I was going to say is I decided a couple months ago with my vintage figures, I need to start somewhere instead of just trying to grab all of them randomly, whatever. So I'm trying to get my first 12 knocked back out.
Yeah.
And so I'm about halfway there. And so Andy and I were texting back and forth, and he had a couple that I needed. And so we did a trade. I actually made a couple of custom. I took a Empire Han and the head off of a Bespin Luke and made a metal ceremony Luke out of the vintage figures and painted the jacket yellow. And so it looks like he's, won the medal ceremony. And I painted it and made it look like young Lando from Solo. I gave him the yellow shirt and the tie and the whole deal.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I traded those to Andy for some of his Star Wars extras as a way to, work on getting my first 12 back in order. And once I check that off, then I'll continue to plow through, those vintage figures. And there's still vintage ships and some of that kind of stuff that I don't have. I also don't know where I'm going to put a lot of this stuff, but that's one of the great collector conundrums also is, you'll figure that part out after you get it, but the chase and finding it is where the fun is.
Yeah. I'll have space for this eventually.
Eventually. That's right. Or I'll decide, you know what, I can get rid of this thing because I'd really like to have this other thing.
Andy showed me those custom Nicks.
Thanks. I really do appreciate that. It was fun. It's something, again, one of those fun things to do, if you have time, if you have a hobby and you have a minute to just tinker, mess with things. I enjoy it. I don't do it all the time, but you just get those creative juices flowing, whether it's a podcast or a customized figure or restoring something. Like, it's a part of a hobby, and we all love doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. When I had Salacious Rum on, he was showing me the custom Ewoks and like custom xenomorphs and stuff that he has, and I thought that was super cool. Aaron loves the beer story.
It's fun. I've seen a bunch, and I haven't done any of these because, of course, I'm still trying to gather. They have the droids figures that you can get, and they're super pricey, but I've also seen people do some of the custom versions of the droids, or taking and painting some of them to look like the silver white droid from Phantom Menace, or just take the same thing, doing custom droids, doing custom anything can be a lot of fun.
Chris just hit 700 subs. Congrats, Chris.
That's great.
Hey, Matches, what's up? I love Star Wars. Never really into Star Wars toys, but collecting stories are cool. Yeah, and I just started collecting a little over a year ago, and I really only started collecting heavily just this past year. I've only been at it for a couple months. Like, it was just like 2 shelves, and now it's the whole bookshelf. And I started with 6 Black Series at the beginning of this year, and now I'm over 50 now of them. I'm getting the helmets. I've got a couple of the Lego sets. It's a good hobby.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and like you said, one of the things that you were asking me beforehand is, what do I collect primarily? Is there a certain line? Is there a certain whatever? Like I said, it's mostly vintage. I have, a handful of Funko Pops. I'm not a Funko Pop collector, but every now and then either somebody gave me one, or like when that first Baby Yoda one came out and everybody was going nuts, I was like, I need to order one just in case. Like, a little bit of the rush made me feel like I needed to. Yeah. And so I have it. And then, of course, I had to get a Mando to go with him. But it's primarily vintage. But like you said, and I have so many friends who, are way into Black Series. Black Series, I think they're neat, but it's not for me. Right. Vintage collection. I think you were talking the other day about that vintage collection Boba Fett and how it was kind of disappointed. The vintage collection to me are a little weird, and I'm glad that somebody likes those because that's for somebody that's not me. I think the major new thing that I really love is, of course, I love the retro collection figures that they're doing, and I've got some of those on the wall behind me. I'm missing 2 from the Star Wars run. I've got all the Empire ones. I look forward to when they do the Return of the Jedi ones, and I like speculating on which ones they're going to put out. But that's really the only modern thing that I'm like, ooh, I need to get that. I'd love to have helmets. I'm fascinated by the helmets. I don't have room to put the helmets anywhere either. Yeah. But I think they're fun, and it's one of those things I'm like, I'm not going to wear it. It's just going to sit somewhere, but it's something that you want to have. So primarily for me, it's vintage stuff, but it's also, it doesn't necessarily have to be just the toys. I showed this Saturday night when I had Charles on. I've got the Star Wars NES cartridge from the Star Wars NES game, and I opened it up the other day, and I had forgotten because I got it off of eBay, and inside of it still had the booklet.
Oh, cool.
The fold out that came in it, which now I'm thinking about putting it in a frame.
Yeah.
Because it's an order form on one side, but on this side, it's got the stuff that you could buy, like the snap together models and what it had, t-shirts. It actually had helmets on here. It had a Stormtrooper helmet was $80, and it had a Vader mask that was only $58. And this was obviously way before, Black Series and some of that kind of stuff. But it's just fun to look at that and see that. And then I've got Empire Strikes Back, the storybook with the record inside of it. Those kinds of, again, anything that connects back really to my childhood, the vintage feel of it, things that are preserved. Like I love history. Where it's like, oh, this is an actual thing from a long time ago. Like to me, that speaks to me almost as much as the Star Wars aspect of it does. Is it feels a little bit like a museum. It's something to be preserved and hopefully passed on. So to me, that's fun too, that historical sentimental aspect of it.
Absolutely. When I started doing the vintage, I talked to the other guys that collect those, and for me, it's not, the sentimental attachment because those weren't out when I was a kid. And I started getting my Star Wars collecting really started with the Phantom Menace figures because I was a couple of years old when those came out. And, but now that I started getting them, I'm getting the Red 5 Kenner, the big Kenner book.
That's awesome.
Andy sent me a couple collecting books. And, Darth Mark has been awesome. And John from Super Awesome Geek Show, and those guys teach me so much about this hobby. And my first two figures were Bosk and Chewbacca, and I thought that was a funny pair. But when I got it, I was like, this is so cool. And I remember somebody in one of my videos said like, well, those look crappy. Like, why'd you get them? And it's like, this is history. Like I hold it in my hands and I'm just like, this is, twice as old as me. Like this figure is over 40 years old, and it is cool. Yeah. And I think, especially being a fan of Star Wars, you keep that in mind.
Absolutely. And I think too, there's so many, one of the other things that's fun about it is there's so many different ways you can go, even as a vintage collector. Like I don't have anything that's vintage that's carded or on card back or graded. I think that's awesome, but that's way out of my price range. And so I'm doing loose collections. I want it to have original stuff. I've got my vintage X-Wing up here on the shelf behind me. I'm still missing. I need one more cannon to get the cannon, all four cannons back on it. And I could go on eBay and buy one for $10 right now that somebody 3D printed or, whatever. But it's also that thrill of the chase to go ahead and get an original one. And I don't have any problem if somebody uses repro, guns and parts, because if it's for your collection, do it how you want to. Now, if you're going to try and sell it to me as a repro, but tell me that it's real, then that's an issue, but I'm not trying to do that either. So, I've put, let me grab it. I did the decals on this one. I did the decals myself when I got it and cleaned this. I got this at a toy show in Atlanta called Joe Lanta, little toy convention. And I got this X-Wing. It was just the shell. It didn't have any cannons or anything on it. And I got it for like $11 from this guy that just had like a little swap meet deal. And so I grabbed it and I brought it home and I cleaned it up and got the sound working, the whole deal. And then I was like, I want to do get the stickers for it. And my buddy Chad, he put me onto a place where you could download them. And I just did it myself with an X-Acto knife and printed out on a printer sheet. It's not exactly, original, manufacturer equipment, whatever, but it's for me and it's going to sit on my shelf. So I'm totally down for it. Same thing, Blue Harvest said, I need a canopy too. Those canopies, those are harder to come by and they're a little bit more pricey, but I can wait, I don't have to. And if I really wanted one bad enough, I could go get a repro one and throw it on there because it'd look good, but it's fine. It's a part of, My Chase and all that kind of stuff. So it's just fun. It really is. And like I said, there's entry levels for all of it. If you want to do graded, if you want to do carded, that's awesome. But it really is a little bit of something for everybody to do collecting wise. Mon Mothma is the game figure for when the retro series comes out for Jedi. You're probably right, because we had Tarkin and we had Pilot Luke was the Empire one. And so those came in the board games. The Hoth Ice Planet Adventure game had the Pilot Luke in it. I think it was the Escape from the Death Star game that had Tarkin in it. I don't know what the Return of the Jedi game would be. I guess there was one, probably. I can't think of it.
Aaron's saying I've slowed down on Pops now. I just pick up what calls to me. Yeah, and I didn't really like Pops at the start, but then I got a couple of them as gifts, and I looked at them and I was like, these are kind of fun ways to have my favorite characters and scenes, and they're inexpensive to collect.
That's right.
So I've got I don't know if you can kind of see. You can kind of see them right there. I got the concept ones that just kind of came out, but yeah. I recently picked up this one that came with the shirt too, and I think they're just kind of fun. But
that's right. Well, and you said another buzzword for me, which is concept. As somebody who doesn't collect really that much modern stuff, but when those concept Pops came out, I was like, ooh, I feel like I need those, because I love Ralph McQuarrie art and I love concept stuff. I got I got this from Framey. They sent me. And I didn't know this, because I have back here, I have the Hot Wheels, the ships.
Yeah.
And I just decided, again, focusing my collection, I'd get all the original trilogy ships, the X-Wing, the Snowspeeder, all that kind of stuff. And I didn't know that this existed until they sent it to me. But there's also a concept art line of the Hot Wheels ships. There's 5 of them. And so there's a Star Destroyer. There's the concept TIE Fighter. And then I don't know if you can see it on the back. There's an X-Wing. There we go. There's an X-Wing. There's the concept Millennium Falcon and the Luke Snowspeeder. I mean, Sandspeeder from Tatooine, that orange weird circle on the side. So, of course, I can complete that collection. I only need 3 more of those. So that is added to the chase list. But it's also small and achievable, which is also easier and important for me.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Michael did bring up a good point. Funkos are a really cheap and easy way to collect as a broke college student. And Mark the other day made a really good point, because he keeps telling me that for him, it's not the movies, it's the toys. And for me, it was the movies. But he was telling me, I didn't realize that. I mean, he said within the first 5 years of Star Wars coming out, he only saw it twice. And that just completely went over my head, that it wasn't readily available. So what you guys had was the toys during that time. So that became Mark's canon. And I absolutely appreciate that now.
Have you watched Plastic Galaxy, Brendan? It's on Amazon. Okay. And also there's the Toys That Made Us on Netflix as well. And you've probably seen that one. Plastic Galaxy is kind of the precursor to the Toys That Made Us. It's on Amazon. And it's like a hour and 20-minute documentary about all the original Star Wars toys. And again, that story about how they did the early bird and the concept of going in and, the guy taking his sock off and turning it into the Jawa cape and, the licensing deal. It's fun. And I've watched it a couple of times over the years, every now and then, just I need to watch that again. Oh, cool. But it's called Plastic Galaxy.
I'll check that out.
And it's like I said, it's just a great, documentary about that early history of those toys.
And that's what Mark was saying right there. I didn't even notice he put it in the chat. But he bought a canopy for 30 pounds. Then the week after, I got a beater X-Wing with a better canopy for 25.
Hey, that's the way it goes most of the time.
Chris has a wall of Pops that's not in his video, but because he's got
that's right.
It looks like a comic book store and like a toy store behind him, but he's got 3,000 Pops.
As we used to mess with Pete a lot of times. He's a funkaholic.
Yeah. Yeah, going down the funk hole. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I guess I haven't seen it, so I definitely need to check that out.
That's right.
And yeah, you kind of touched on it because you said modern and modern in concept were your hot keywords.
Yeah, I love concept art. I've got these Macquarie prints over here behind me. That one's crooked. And so I found that packet of them. I was telling you this before we came on the air. There's a local thrift store here that actually does have a few things from time to time. And I went in one day and they had the whole Macquarie concept art pack that had the 22 prints in it. And I got it for $15 back in October. And so, of course, I was just thrilled to, find that. And so I've got a few of those up here on the wall. I love artwork. I love, posters, especially vintage posters. Of course, these Red 5 posters are amazing. And I was thrilled to add those, to my wall. But yeah, my favorite line are the things to collect, like I said, is vintage. If it's vintage, that's really my go-to. Especially because there's so much I don't have. I've got a long way to go to complete any kind of vintage collection. Vehicles, ships, all that kind of stuff. Eventually an AT-AT, eventually, adding those other things in, TIE fighters, whatever. But so anything vintage is going to automatically get my attention. And then the other things that go along with it, like I said, are the Hot Wheels ships from the original trilogy. As I find one I don't have, I throw that in there. And again, those are quick, easy hits. It's $4 for a little toy ship. If it's concept art, I'm a sucker for that. I love things like, all the stuff in Rebels that they based off of all that Macquarie concept art. The Rebels Vader has that longer, elongated face. The fact that Zeb was concept art, Chewbacca, all those kinds of things that just, it speaks to me.
Yeah, and Chopper and R2.
That's right.
That's one of my favorite things.
I've got the I ordered on eBay a while back. It was from Celebration 4. They did the concept art 3PO and R2 action figures. Have you seen that?
I have not.
Let's see if I can get it real quick without knocking everything down. And so they did them. It's got so cool. A coin. It's got the Celebration sticker on it. But like you said, this way, R2's got his arms out, just like Chopper would. You can almost hear Chopper making noises when you look at that. Yeah. But that was the original, the concept for 3PO was to have arms and to be, like that. So any of that kind of stuff is automatically gets my attention.
I had to put this up.
One day you're going to get there.
Just piled on a pop wall. Yeah, and I like that everything is just mostly on this shelf right now. I've got some stuff that I need to slowly place on it, but people are wondering when I'm going to get another little shelf, and I'm probably going to put one over here. And it's
that's right.
And
if you're like me, I find I'll come in here sometimes, or I'll go back and look at clips of a show, and I'll look at all the stuff behind me, and I'm like, how do I want to rearrange that? Like, it's always that in my head, like, how can I do that better? How can I feature something? How can I, like I've got Chewbacca hanging out behind me. And that's I think I told you this before we came on too, prop store that does the online auctions of all the real, props. And, that stuff is so expensive. Well, they did a contest a couple of years ago on their Instagram feed, and I actually won. And it was one of these like, comment, and share, our Instagram feed. And so in that frame back there over my shoulder is a strand of Chewbacca hair framed. Let me see if I can move so you can see it. I definitely will knock things over if I try to take that down. But it's a strand of Chewbacca hair off that original Chewbacca costume, and it comes with a picture, and it's framed really nicely, and it has a certificate of authenticity. And they sell those through Prop Store for like $400. But I won it on Instagram, and it was one of those things that as I won it, I thought, is this really going to be sent to me? Is this really going to be a thing? And then like 6 weeks later, I got a card in the mailbox that said I had a package to pick up at the post office. And sure enough, they had sent it to me, and it was awesome.
Yeah. I don't win stuff. I
very rarely do. That's why it surprised me so much.
When I was a couple of years old, I was probably 6 or close to 7, because Attack of the Clones was coming out, and a couple weeks before it came out, I won a life-size cardboard cutout of a clone trooper.
That's awesome.
And I remember having it and sitting there and looking at it and like, that kind of looks like a stormtrooper, but something in my brain didn't click. And then I went to the movie and I saw the characters, I saw the clone troopers being introduced, and then the Imperial March played, and I was like, oh, they become the stormtroopers. I like totally didn't even get it.
Yep.
But it was pretty funny. But that's one of the only things that I've like won from a contest.
That's awesome.
My half is action figures. His is a fish tank and a few reptiles. Yeah. Hey, Sleeping, what's up? How's it going? He's probably been playing with his lightsabers and the stuff that he got at Disney, which is awesome. So we did touch on that. But then, other than Star Wars, do you collect anything non-Star Wars? Or
Not really, and that's one of those things also where I've had to kind of stay focused. My favorite non-Star Wars franchise, no surprise for somebody my age, is Indiana Jones. The two things I grew up playing were Star Wars and Indiana Jones, and even despite the jokes with my twins and Harrison Ford early, they come by that naturally. I catch myself sometimes on eBay looking at those Indiana Jones toys. Yeah. And I love them and I'd love to have them, but that's just another, distraction from my Star Wars collecting and another thing to have to figure out where am I going to put it. So I don't really have much in the way of non-Star Wars, collectibles. Talking about easy things that catch my attention. I've noticed recently at Walmart and Target, they have the Hot Wheels, the little line of like the movie cars. And so it's like the DeLorean, the Ecto-1, the Ferrari from James Bond, and some of that. And so there's a part of me that thinks I want those. Yeah. Because I do have, I have the Robin one from Magnum PI as somebody who grew up watching tons of Magnum PI. And so there's a part of me that's like, I need to get those to go with that. I don't need those. That's the reality of it. But yeah, my favorite non-Star Wars franchise is Indiana Jones, and I would love to have some of those. And maybe, one day I may get like a vintage, an Indy figure or, just a couple of pieces, but I don't necessarily need the whole collection as much as I'd love to have it.
Yeah. Mark's trying to get the Indiana Jones vintage figures.
Yeah, they can get pricey pretty quick because they're harder to track down. I don't know if they just didn't make as much of it or what.
When Chris, 1000th Ghost, he's done a video where he showed off some of the indie toys, and I didn't even know that they were a thing, so I thought that was really cool to see him. But yeah, and with me, my non-Star Wars, I'm trying to keep it one or two characters from iconic movie franchises, and then anything like the retro Spider-Man Marvel Legends. And if it's going to be the comic or animated series appearances of the characters, and that's how I'm going to keep it somewhat focused, even though I've got Star Wars and Marvel, and it'll get out of control, but I can put a little fence around it by
there you go.
Saying,
that's right.
Yeah.
Just compartmentalize it.
Yeah. Now Mark brings up a good point. He said we haven't mentioned Hot Toys, and I know Andy's a terrible influence when it comes to Hot Toys. Andy and Josh.
I say Andy and Josh both will get you in trouble when it comes to Hot Toys.
Yeah, and I've fallen down the hole. I've got I preemptively celebrated my getting 1,000 subscribers by ordering a Qui-Gon Jinn Hot Toy. So it should be here sometime in May. And then I was looking at it and I was just like, well, if I have the Qui-Gon, I can't just have one of these.
Hot Gotta have Maul too.
And so I got Maul. And then I was like, it's the Clone Wars Maul. So I kind of need Ahsoka. And then I was like, well, if I have Ahsoka, I need.
That's how they get you, Brandon. That's how they get you.
So yeah, I have said that I'm only going to get the 5, and they're all prequel characters, funny enough, but it's what I appreciate.
I don't have any. I don't foresee having any. I will say, for the briefest of seconds, the only thing that has tempted me was the Clone Wars General Obi-Wan, where he's wearing that white armor, because among the list of other things I don't have or do, but wish I did, I wish I had a set of Stormtrooper armor, like to put on and wear and whatever. That'd be amazing. I don't do cosplay. I think it's great. It's just one of those talents and time and energy things that I don't think I have. But I have thought, and I even got tempted last week because my guest last week, Charles, sent me a link. If I were to cosplay as something, it would be that General Obi-Wan Kenobi, because I love that white armor, the shoulder piece, the arm pieces. I think with the beard, I think I could trim it up and pull it off. So when I saw that hot toy for a hot half of a second, I was like, oh, and then I went, close the window, walk away. There's nothing to see here. And it turns out to buy a set of that armor that I would then have to customize myself would cost about the same as that hot toy. So if I was going to make that choice, I'd probably go that way, but I'm good. I'm good staying in my lane.
Yep. And they're
amazing. The hot toys are amazing for sure, but it's just definitely not for me.
Right. And I felt like with the Qui-Gon, I had to have him because he's my favorite character. And I think the way that they do the face sculpts and everything, they're quite amazing. And I fell down that rabbit hole. But hey, John Joker, how's it going? John Joker donated a hot toy to Sleeping Collectibles hot toy giveaway. So John Joker
That's cool.
also is a big Hot Toys fan. He's got the Hulk Buster one, like one of the bigger ones. It's crazy. That's cool. Hi, my name is Rick, and I have a toy collecting problem. Absolutely.
So say we all.
Yeah. I love seeing Gianni's young Han, original trilogy Han, and Force Awakens Han all next to each other. I thought that was absolutely awesome. Cool. I swear it's Josh.
Sure, that's what they all say.
Gianni doesn't help either. Yeah, thank you, Aaron. I'm excited for when it gets here. Bad influence. Getting a hot toy figure. There will eventually be one I can't resist. Exactly. But playtime is over and I'm a mere mortal again. I almost got Chris to order the speeder bike one with the Scout Trooper when we were on the stream together. But I mean, I get it. It's hard because you look at it and it's like, think about everything I could get for that. But it's a hashtag get Chris a hot toy. Hey, John Ald, how's it going? But so you said your favorite non-Star Wars franchise was Indiana Jones.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I have a hard time placing my top 5. And it kind of goes between Lord of the Rings and Aliens.
Okay.
So it's pretty neck and neck, and I love, and it's not just the movie franchise for Lord of the Rings, it's the books too, because I read those while I was growing up. And
that's cool.
So the next question I had was the number one thing you'd like to have in your collection.
Ooh. Gosh, I mean, if we're going wave a magic wand unicorn kind of thing, I think it would be a screen used Stormtrooper helmet. I think would be amazing. You know, something that was actually used in the movies and the films. You know, anything screen used, I think is fascinating. It's really cool. That was one of my favorite parts. At Celebration, Prop Store had a booth there in the merchandise area, and they had in, you know, a glass case, like they had the maquette model of the bottom side of Cloud City with the little figure that was supposed to be Luke hanging off the weather vane. And it's, you know, it's this big and there's no detail on it when you look at it up close, but it was used for that wide panning shot as the Falcon is, you know, coming in there to grab him. And so any of that old screen use stuff, I think is amazing. So if I was, you know, what would be that kind of thing, not necessarily achievable, but like a screen use Stormtrooper helmet, I think would be fascinating. Things that I could get, you know, things that I'd like to have. Like I said, we've talked before. I'd love to get some of the helmets. I think the Black Series helmets are pretty great, especially for the value.
Yeah.
They seem to be really accessible. So those are fun. I'll probably grab some of those somewhere down the line. Completing my vintage collection. I think that has a lot, that has as much draw as anything, is just being able to continue to add to that. I also will say the Italian Gare Stellari Star Wars poster, an original one of those, that's way up there on the list. You can get the prints pretty easily, but I'd love to get an original one. That'd probably be it, actually, now that we're talking about it.
Okay. Yeah. And
speaking of that particular poster, that young man whose comment is on the screen, he has one, and it teases me every time he does a show.
Because you can see it just right over his shoulder.
You can see it right over his shoulder, rubbing it in.
Yeah. And I'm glad he decided to keep that poster and go the poster route, because you can tell when Andy talks about the posters and everything just how much joy it brings him. So I'm glad he decided to do that. And
I did too.
I
was too.
I'm starting to enjoy getting some art prints, and I've been trying to think of like what is the number one thing that I would want. And during the Peg Warmer stream I mentioned that I would want a complete vintage Falcon, but I think the number one thing, if it was one thing to have in my collection, like you said, Wave of Magic Wand, it would actually be one of the models that they used of the Falcon in.
That's cool.
In the movie.
Absolutely. I hear people talk about sometimes where you can go to like the Lucasfilm archives. Like, I think my head would explode if I ever got to just go walk around in there and to see all of that stuff. Like, of course, in my mind, the Lucasfilm archives looks like the warehouse at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where it's just the rows and rows of all the stuff. But to get to go, and you see it every now and then on some of these, making of, features that they'll do when the movies come out, and the production art, or the designers will get to go, like, we got to go to, the Lucasfilm archives and look at, original costumes and model the new costumes after, like, to go someplace like that and just walk around and see all of that kind of stuff. It just, exactly what Sleeping said. My head would explode if I saw it, because it has to be like, that should be Galaxy's Edge. You should be able just to go there and walk around and see all of it.
I'd pay money to go see it. I can't imagine how crazy that would be. I'd probably cry, and not much gets me emotional like that. But yeah, I've absolutely enjoyed the collecting part of it, and I'm so excited because with Beyond the Blast Doors, we always talk about how it's a good time to be a Star Wars fan.
Absolutely.
And they do such a good job of getting people excited about things. The Beyond the Blast Doors live that they did when they talked about the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars, I watched a little bit of it the other morning. Was that just yesterday? That was just yesterday when it came out. But I thought it was funny because 2 days before they announced it, I picked up the DVDs of it. And they're not bad in price, but they also weren't cheap, especially because they're hard to get. And I'm glad I did get it in physical media, but I'm glad that it's on Disney Plus now, so I can just pop it on whenever I want. They have sealed boxes of every vintage.
And another one, the archives, and also Rancho Obi-Wan, to go to Rancho Obi-Wan and see literally everything that's ever been made for Star Wars merchandise wise. Like, that's another one that would just be wild to go see.
Amazing. It's all good, Gilster. It's all good. I would cry, but fan since 77, hasn't he? Yeah, and that's amazing because, like, for me, I've never been alive when there wasn't Star Wars stuff. So and I didn't go through the dark times, as many fans call it, where there wasn't stuff. So I completely understand the appreciation for the Thrawn trilogy and Heir to the Empire and everything. And about a year ago now, I listened to the audiobooks of those, and I absolutely enjoyed it. And like you were saying, some people find it a little hokey and stuff like that and cheesy, but that's what Star Wars is. It's when Star Wars is at its best, when it's a little bit weird and cheesy. Sent you something on Twitter. I'll have to check that out. Thank you. Oh, I don't see it. I'm crying now. Don't YouTube and drive Gilster. The world sucked before Star Wars. And sleeping, we were just talking about going to and you just mentioned Galaxy's Edge and what Galaxy's Edge should be, but going and seeing, have you been to Galaxy's Edge?
I haven't been yet.
Okay. When I went and saw the Falcon and then going into the places that they have set up, and you can sit at the holo table and
Absolutely.
There's the blast helmets and stuff. I feel like it really is the best time to be a Star Wars fan, and they're keeping up with this content, and we're getting the Mandalorian, and I don't know if you saw it, but they're doing the different art of the Legends books, the Heir to the Empire,
yes.
Shatterpoint, and then one of the other ones, the Darth Bane trilogy. And I just feel like there's so many different types of Star Wars fans that we're getting and seeing appreciation for all different types. And I know sometimes people from different groups feel like they're not getting the appreciation, or they're not focusing on the right stuff. But that's the nice thing about Star Wars is you wait a little bit, and then the thing that you love will be shown the attention to,
Absolutely.
Was there a world before Star Wars? It was a long time ago in a galaxy star far, far away. It's a world of Star Trek. Hey, Stumbler, how's it going? Sleeping mentioned Galaxy's Edge in October. Let's go. I was thinking about that, and I just realized I coach football, and that'll be right during football season. So I don't think I can make it work, because I've never been to Disney World. I went to Disneyland, and that was the first time when I went to Galaxy's Edge. So I had a great time with that, and I went by myself, so it was an amazing experience as a Star Wars fan to just look around and just be in awe. But what are you most excited about coming up? Because we do have quite a bit of, you think about even going into next year, 2022, which is not honestly that far away when you think about it. We've got multiple shows. We've got multiple shows, games, books coming up. And so what are you most excited for?
It's hard not to be excited about the Kenobi series. To get the drop this week about the casting information, that was a lot of fun to see. I'm excited for that show, overall. And I'll be perfectly honest, I can't wait to hear more about what is Taika Waititi's movie going to be. I really want to see, some Thor Ragnarok version of Star Wars, because I think Taika is brilliant. I think that one of the hills that I choose to die on is that I think Thor Ragnarok is the best MCU movie there is. But so I'm excited for that. It's hard not to be excited about all of it. Book of Boba Fett's going to be fun. More Mando down the line is going to be fun. There's really not, there's everything is to look forward to. It really is. The Lando series. I can't wait to find out what the Lando series is going to be.
Right.
The Lando Calrissian Chronicles. If they don't call it that, what are we even doing?
Yeah.
And then what I want, and of course it's the thing that we hear so many rumors about. I want Rian Johnson to get that trilogy that keeps being teased and floated and whatever, because I truly love Last Jedi. And I think that it's it's way up there in my list of favorite Star Wars movies. And I think his vision is really great. And I would love for him to have the chance to do a set of movies that encapsulates that whole vision from beginning to end. So I'm all about some Rian Johnson.
Yeah. And, I thought The Last Jedi was beautifully done, but it kind of put him in a hard place, because you had JJ and then Ryan and then JJ again, and to put something like that in 3 different people's hands and to not work it out ahead of time, so I would like to see what he could do with the worlds and the story if he's got a trilogy.
That's right. Absolutely.
So And I know some people really don't like what he did with the story, and it's too bad that they didn't find somebody else for that middle one and then just give him a trilogy of his own.
Sure.
And I feel like that is going to ruin it for so many Star Wars fans, and those fans are going to ruin it for others, because we might get something completely beautiful from Rian Johnson.
Sure.
And yeah, so up next is the Bad Batch, and on a scale from 1 to 10, how excited would you say you are for Bad Batch?
I'd say, a good 7 or 8. And I've said many times before, it's kind of become, me repeating the same stories over again. But I was not originally a Clone Wars person. I kind of came to Clone Wars because of Rebels. I love Rebels. I think it's some of the best modern Star Wars storytelling we've gotten. The story of Kanan. That's where I came to really love Ahsoka. And what I did is used Clone Wars as Andy is excited. I used Clone Wars as a reference point for things in Rebels, the Mortis arc, the Darksaber. So I'd go back and watch those bits of Clone Wars, and eventually I've seen it all. The last series, or the Clone Wars that we got last year, that last season, especially by the time we got to those last 4 episodes with Maul and Ahsoka, I mean, it was cinematic. It really was. And to have those 4, tie those together and let that be a thing, and so that makes me more excited for Bad Batch, and seeing that trailer is exciting, because I want to know where the story's going to go, like any of it. So I'm definitely excited for it.
Yeah. And coming up soon, I've got something kind of exciting to announce with Paul's Collectibles for some Bad Batch stuff. So
nice.
Keep your eyes out for that. We'll have a live stream probably on a Saturday just like this, and we'll be talking about what we're going to do with that. But
Very cool.
I initially wasn't a fan of the Bad Batch. I didn't see the unfinished animatics that they did. But when season 7 came out and it was the first arc that they did, all I wanted to do was get to Anakin, Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Padme, that kind of stuff. So I didn't give it a fair shot. And I just went back, and I had a hard time sleeping last night. So I put on the first episode, and I watched a little bit where the Bad Batch is introduced, and I was like, this is really cool. And it's super fun. And, we joke about it that it's Star Wars A-Team.
Yes.
And
but I'm totally here for Star Wars A-Team.
Yeah, exactly. I have every figure that they've announced so far on pre-order, and I just really look forward to seeing what they're going to do with that story, because you see Saw Gerrera in the trailer, you see Fennec Shand in the trailer. I'm interested to see what they're doing with that Omega character, and will the Camino stuff tie into the Dr. Pershing from Mandalorian? And there's so many different things that can happen. And I was really, really excited when I found out that they're doing a 70-minute premiere for the first episode.
That's exciting.
Like, that's a movie length. Like, that's an animated movie length.
Yeah.
So I know that we moved the time back, so we could have more time to talk. But if I want to be respectful of your time, and I
appreciate that.
Yeah, I thank you very much for coming on.
Oh, it's been a blast.
Yeah, I put your link. It's the pinned message in the chat, and I have it in the description. So if everybody could please subscribe to Nick podcast of the Whills.
We'd love to have your subscription, and I'd love for you to, like I said, check out tomorrow night. We've got Brandon from the Topps Star Wars Card Trader app, and I'm really looking forward to hearing about his Star Wars story as well, but also kind of how that ties. I'm on a hot streak of having folks on who get to work in Star Wars, which of course is the dream for all of us. To get to have your job be Star Wars. So I'm not there yet, but we keep swinging and trying, and maybe we'll get there one day. But thanks so much for having me on. I really have had a blast. I love having these conversations, and I can talk about Star Wars pretty much anytime without any real effort.
Yeah. And I know everybody in the chat appreciated it too, because you're so good at talking about the things that you enjoy, and that's why I love your podcast. Is you're so to the point about it, and so much about it, and it's easy to tell that you love it. So I really do appreciate.
You're very kind.
I really do appreciate having you on. So thank you, everybody in the chat. And thanks again, Nick.
Absolutely.
All right. See you, everybody.